WGN viewers, if you're looking for the 9 o'clock news, you can watch it live on CLTV or at 3w.wgntv.com. And we're coming to you from the Coliseum in Oakland, California, where tonight WGN Sports presents White Sox baseball. It's Jose Abreu, Jose Quintana, Todd Frazier and the Sox as they get set to butt heads with Bob Melvin's Oakland Athletics. Hi, everybody, and welcome. I'm Ken Harrelson with Steve Stone as we get set to bring you Game 2 of this 4-game set. If you missed the season's opener last night, Chris Sale, once again, what new was good. He picked up the victory. Robertson picked up saves. We won that ball game 4-3, all 7 runs coming in the third inning. So on the bump tonight, another southpaw for us, a guy who has been one of the most hard-luck pitchers we've ever seen, Jose Quintana, but he has had trouble in the first inning.
Unfortunately, most pitchers have trouble in the first, but very few have as much trouble as Jose. 26 runs he's given up with an ERA of 7.03. Opponents hitting .326 against him in the first inning. That was last year. He had a good spring training. Hopefully he's worked that out. And Jose Quintana in night games has been, well, close to unhittable. Day games, he's been very hittable, and there's really a tremendous difference between the two. So he's very happy this is a night game, and this is the second game of the series, second game of the season. We'll take a look at the numbers, and you'll see what we're talking about. 9-5 at night, ERA 2.5, only 7 home runs allowed. Conversely, 0-5 during the daytime with an ERA of 5.40. So Jose is very happy that it's under the lights tonight, and let's see if the Sox can go 2-0.
Well, he's got to take care of Billy Butler. Billy Butler always is tough against us, and also Danny Valencia had a couple of hits last night.
Last night against Chris Sale, they both did pretty well, but Jose Quintana handles these two guys. Last night, Butler had a couple of doubles and hit the other ball awfully hard, only to see Austin Jackson made a very good play. Danny Valencia took the ball back up the middle. He drove in a run. So you have to control these guys, and Jose has been able to do just that. Billy Butler hitting just 167 at 5 for 30. Danny Valencia 2 for 17, hitting just 118 against Quintana. So this is their two big right-hand hitters, and Jose has held them down well. And hopefully tonight he can get some runs, get some support, and go 1-0 like Chris Sale.
All right, Game 2 of this 4-game set. Sit back, relax, and strap it down. White Sox baseball coming your way. Chicago White Sox baseball is brought to you by Miller Lite, the original light Pilsner. Cheers, it's Miller time. By Honda. Start something special with a great deal on a Honda, now at your Honda dealer. Xfinity. Xfinity X1 will change the way you experience TV. And by Ford, America's best-selling brand 6 years running, inviting you to check out our fuel-efficient lineup at your local Ford store or at localfordstores.com. And by your Chicago and Northwest Indiana Hyundai dealers who invite you to test drive our award-winning lineup today. Visit buyhyundai.com.
Brought to you by Xfinity. Xfinity X1 with change the way you experience TV. That's probably will change, but anyway, we're back at the Coliseum for baseball, and let's take a look at how Robin's going to line up our Sox for the game tonight. Adam Eaton leading it off, and Jimmy Rollins in the 2 spot. Jose Abreu has always hit well in his ballpark. He's hitting number 3. Then it's Todd Frazier, Melky Cabrera, Avisail Garcia, who's taking to the DH role with Brett Lawrie. Alex Avila getting the start tonight, and Austin Jackson in center field and hitting 9th. The defense and how they'll line up behind former White Sox Chris Bassett. Chris Davis in left field, and it's Coco Crisp and Josh Reddick in the outfield with Danny Valencia, Marcus Semien, Jed Lowry, Yonder Alonso in the infield. Josh Fegley gets a nod behind the plate, and Chris Bassett on the hill. Last year Bassett was 1-8, but his ERA was about 3.5. As you can see, he threw the ball very well, didn't get a whole lot of support, and this year he's hoping that this offense that Oakland showed in spring training will come through for him. The umpires for the game tonight: Phil Cuzzy behind the plate, then it's Dan Bellino at first, Gabe Morales at second, and Tom Hallion at third. It's absolutely a beautiful night for baseball here in Oakland. It's a little bit warmer than this time of year normally, and there's the sunset over the bay. Absolutely gorgeous. And so the Sox trying to go 2-0 on this young season. Will try to continue their red-hot offense against Chris Bassett. So we're ready to play baseball. And it's time to turn it over to my play-by-play partner, Ken Harrelson.
Hi, Steve. Thank you. And once again, good evening, everyone, and welcome to White Sox baseball right here with WGN Sports. So happy you could join us. And before we show you our picks to click, you at home select yours as Adam Eaton will lead it off. Adam last night, 2 for 3 with a triple, a single, and a run scored. So the 27-year-old right-hander, 6'5", 220 pounds, out of Nashville. His first pitch is taken for a strike.
Got a pretty good sinker. He throws both a curve and a slider.
Well, the young man's got a chance to be a good pitcher. When he gets that slider over, hitters don't like it one bit.
Now what he's done, he's changed his motion. You might see it's almost like a David Price in that he used to have a much bigger delivery. Now he's simplified it, making his control a whole lot better. He's got less moving parts, and it's worked well for him. He's worked with Sonny Gray in the wintertime, both of them living in Nashville, Tennessee.
Outfield, slightly to the left. And Fegley makes a nice stop. And here at the Coliseum, 330 down the lines, 367 in short right center, 362 in short left center, 388 in deep right and left centers, and 400 straight away. One out.
Good slow overhand curveball from Bassett, and he had Adam well out in front of it.
Batting in the second position.
Nice stop by Fegley, and quickly 1 up, 1 down.
That'll bring up Jimmy Rollins. Rollins 1 for 4 with an RBI and a run scored last evening. Jimmy, good spring. 353, 4 homers, 13 knocked in. Sox 17 and 13 on the spring. And led Major League Baseball in home runs with 51.
Jimmy's coming back and playing in a place he grew up. So you know he's going to have a lot of folks in the seats. Anxious to see him play, and he's anxious to get off to a very good start.
Well, he can be a difference maker on our ball club in several ways. Tyler Saladino, who also had a good spring and is going to be in a lot of ball games. So Robin has got some versatility. anywhere he wants to use it.
I think the shortstop position is certainly well manned, and you're right about Saladino. He's pretty good wherever you put him.
Between the two of them in spring, 9 homers, 27 RBIs. That's souvenir left side. Chris Bassett, highly thought of by the White Sox. Hate to let him go, but it is what it is.
At the time you're trying to win it, he came over here in the Jeff Samardzija deal.
That's into center field. Coco Crisp got plenty of room. All right, now let's check out our picks to click. Jimangio, our director and the crew. Well, they went to Adam Eaton. Steve's going with Melky.
Batting in the third position.
And Frank Pador, my good friend. And we're going to go with Alex Avila. And there's a base hit. So Abreu, who was 1 for 3 last night with a double and a run scored.
And last night, in just a terrific matchup against John Axford, Axford threw everything up in the zone. This time Bassett gets it about, well, thigh high. And Jose just rifles it, takes it exactly where it was pitched, takes it over Lowry's head, and keeps the inning alive. Ballpark will be a whole lot livelier with the heat still of the daytime, as opposed to at night when it gets really heavy in the alleys.
Tough pitch right there to Todd. Frazier 0 for 4 last night. Last time up in the 8th inning, they'll hit a bullet right to Valencia at third base. There's a soft 2-hopper. Going to go to second, and it'll retire the side. Nothing across. It was a hit. No errors. 1 left after having a play. It's our guys, nothing, and their guys coming to bat.
Line up his Athletics tonight. Coco Crisp leading it off, and it's Jed Lowry, Josh Reddick, Danny Valencia in the cleanup spot with Chris Davis, Billy Butler, Josh Fegley, Yonder Alonso, and Marcus Semien at shortstop hitting 9th. The defense, and how they'll line up behind Jose Quintana. In the outfield, Melky Cabrera, Austin Jackson, and Adam Eaton. In the infield, it's Frazier, Rollins, Lowry, and Abreu. Alex Avila gets a nod behind the plate, and Jose Quintana on the hill. Jose 9-10 last year, but a fine 3.36 ERA. He did complete 1 game. His walk strikeout ratio was brilliant. 44 walks, 177 strikeouts. And so, by and large, he kept the ball in the ballpark. This is a good park for that. And he would love to retire Coco's Crisp, who is right on the cusp of 300 stolen bases. One more, and he'll have that, sitting at 299.
So the 36-year-old veteran who has been a thorn in the behind of our Sox in his career. It's a lifetime 268 hitter. A's last year 68 and 94. Bob Melvin, one of the best managers in the game, but if you don't have any horses, it's tough to get a good ride.
Now, 2012 they were pretty good, and they weren't expected to be. But all of a sudden, as Bob has become very familiar with, they traded away most of his team, making 9 trades, including a couple guys in Josh Donaldson and Yoenis Cespedes that could really play.
Checks it up. Nice snap right there. So 1 down.
Batting second baseman, number 8, Jan Lowry.
This is Lowry's return to Oakland. Last year he spent with Houston, where he hit just .222 in 69 games. Now coming back with Oakland, where he had some pretty good years before he decided to go to Texas.
Well, he's always hit Chris Sale well. He was 1 for 3 last night with 2 big RBIs.
I talked with Alex Avila about Jose Quintana. He caught him a whole lot in the spring, and he told me a couple of different things they were trying to work on. And you see him sitting away on that last pitch. And Alex said that one of the things that he's got to get Jose doing is feeling comfortable throwing the ball away to the right-hand hitters and using a backdoor cutter, because he can throw it inside very well. He's got to get him to hone in the outside corner to right-handers.
Well, if he does that, he's going to win 15, 18 ball games.
He's that good, and he probably, with any offense at all, should do it this year. We'll take a look at quality starts. And the AL leaders, only Dallas Keuchel, who won the Cy Young Award, had more. 25 of them. When he went out there, he gave his ball club a chance to win each and every time.
That's in the left field. That should be a can of corn. 2 down.
As so often happens early in the season, especially, you sell out for opening night in this case, and the next night, especially with the Warriors playing right across the parking lot, not all that many folks around.
There are in the next building.
There are in the next building, yes. They're going to sell them out with one of the best teams ever.
Well, they're good, and Curry is fun to watch, and they also can play some defense. But I'd like to have seen that series of 94-95 Bulls.
I wish you could do that.
I know.
It would be very entertaining.
Yes, it would be. It would be. It was 95-96. Bulls. I'll tell you what, yeah, that would have been fun to watch. But I know who I would have bet on if I was going to bet it.
I think I feel the same way. Scottie Pippen said he thinks he can shut down Steph Curry. That would be a good trick, but Scottie is a bigger man.
Well, he
was a great defender.
Either Scottie or Michael. Yeah. And by the way, I believe what he says, because very few players have ever been voted defensive player and offensive player in the same year like Michael.
Yeah. Well, this team here in Oakland is awfully good. They can shoot the eyes out of it.
They're the first team in NBA history to have more than 1,000 3-pointers.
The game has really changed. I mean, it just has changed. It's not the
Every
same game
has
it was.
changed.
Yeah.
You know, people say baseball hadn't changed. That's so much BS. Baseball is a different game because the culture of the game is different. And when the culture of the game is different, the game changes. The rules are the same, but the game changes.
Well, this game has changed drastically from the steroid-enhanced slug ball days. Playing a little more small ball these days than they did. Putting the emphasis on execution. The execution is good. Look at Kansas City. They execute all the time, and they won it all.
Well, the reason they're playing 6-inning games is because of the bullpens. That's been the biggest change in the last 50 years on the field is the bullpens. Ready? Out of Savannah, Georgia.
Pretty good player. Wanted an extension. Gave the Oakland Ball Club a deadline as to when he would negotiate. The deadline has come and gone. They still expect Reddick to put together a very strong year. He's a good player.
That's into left field. Melky's got the B. He got the ball. Nice 1-2-3 inning for Quintana after 1-0 score.
Report the White Sox in Minnesota, one of the two teams without a player on the DL to start the season. The injury report is brought to you by Dr. Anthony Romeo Orthopedics. If you have any shoulder or elbow problems, go to RomeoOrthopedics.com or call 312-432-2342.
He is a specialist. He is a genius. And Jake Peavy should have bought him a brand new big automobile for what he did for the Jake Meister.
For as many years as he extended his career when it looked like it was over, I should say so.
Got him another $40-50 million.
Yeah, that's if you really need it, though. You know, it doesn't go as far as it used to.
Well, Dr. Romeo is something, boy, I'll tell you. That's the first time that's ever been done on a baseball player. Melky. You know, talking about Josh Reddick last inning wanting an extension. This is the wrong organization to be asking an extension.
Well, it's good in one way. He wants to play here. I mean, that's pretty good in this day and age where players will go to the highest bidder many times. He wanted to stay here, but you're right about that. They don't extend too many of their guys, i.e. Josh Donaldson.
And they're not going to do it in the near future either.
No.
Melky. 0 for 4 last night. Hit the ball very hard one time.
This is really the big guy in the middle of the order that has to get off to a good start. Very tough for him last year to drive in runs early in the season. He could make a huge difference in the 5 spot, trying to give some cover behind Frazier, who's in there to give some cover behind Abreu.
Well, if you'd have said after the first 2 months of the season last year he's going to wind up with 77 RBIs, you'd say you're out of your mind.
No, just a great second half.
That ball hit deep into left center field. Chris Davis. You got a cookie right there, and just underneath. I think Milky thought that ball was going to go a little further than it did, but you mentioned it earlier. You touched on it. A lot of guys just hate to hit it here at night. In the daytime, no problem.
No. You play a day game and it's warm and the ball's lively. It's only 330 down the lines. That's really pretty short. Even 367 to somewhat of the power alley is short. But at nighttime, it plays awfully big.
Well, I remember that day game here. Because there's a chopper, 2-hopper. 2 down. Abreu hit that one off the facade of the upper deck, off Gregerson. And he hit it so hard it bounced back out onto the field.
I was surprised that ball didn't go through the facade because it was as hard a ball as hit maybe all year. It sounded like it was shot out of a cannon.
Well, it was the hardest home run, not the longest, but the hardest home run we saw hit all year.
It didn't have a chance to get up any higher than that. In daytime, nighttime, whatever time, that one was easily gone.
There's Lowry. Brett. 1 for 4 against his former mates last evening. Wearing some tinted glasses that take some glare out. Outfield straight up, spread out about equidistant.
Sonny Gray, who was supposed to start last night's game only to come down with food poisoning, he's going to start tomorrow night's game. They say he's entirely healthy, was in the hospital for a bit, had 3 bags of fluid to get rehydrated, and now he's 100% and he's their best. He's a good one. And they count on him. You don't have too many guys that are absolutely #1 starters, but last year 14-7 with a 2.73 ERA for a real bad Oakland ball club. Those are pretty impressive numbers.
That's into right field. So Bassett retires him in order. He is retired 6 of 7. Sports Tale of the Tape as we go to the bottom of the second inning. Valencia, Davis, and Butler. These are the three guys in succession that you got to watch out for. You're getting back to Sonny Gray, he's a thoroughbred. There's no question about that. He's one of the best in the game. But a friend of mine who's an Oakland fan called me before spring training started, and he said, "What do you think they're going to do with Sonny Gray?" And I said, "Well, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll just bet you a dozen golf balls that he is not in the opening day roster." I thought they were going to trade him.
Well, he's one of the guys that you probably will get more for as you move along and you wait to see what real bad injuries happen to very good teams, because he can bring you back a bunch.
That's why I didn't think he'd be on the opening day roster. His real value cannot be achieved on a non-contending ball.
No, he's a bona fide #1 on a team that's not going to get there this year, although they believe they can be a surprise team, but it would surprise a whole lot of people.
Well, you're supposed to believe that. Did you ever play on a team that when you came to the ballpark you thought we were going to lose?
No, in spring training I always thought we were going to win, and then on a daily or nightly basis the other team usually told us why we weren't. I was on those kind of teams.
Good. Had it off balance out in front. Pops it up. Now he was going to take charge.
The White Sox ballpark pass is available now, and for just $59, fans can attend all 16 Monday through Friday home games in April and May, beginning April 18th against the Angels. Visit whitesox.com/ballparkpass to order yours today.
So here's Chris Davis, the left fielder. This guy hit 27 home runs last year from Milwaukee, and after the All-Star break hit more than anybody in baseball. Hit 21 after the All-Star break.
He has one swing. He admits that at this point of his career, everybody knows what he's going to do. He goes up there each and every time to try to hit the ball as far as he can hit it, and sometimes he can do just that.
Well, he's out of that Don Zimmer, Rob Deere frame of mind where swing hard in case you hit it. Because if he hits it, you can put it on the board.
A very strong guy, acquired from Milwaukee. That's that outside part of the plate that Q is having some difficulties with. One of the things that Alex Avila talked about was hitting the outside corner with his cutter, the cutter that he usually throws inside to right-handers. He wants him to work on throwing it away to right-handers. They give up on it. You get a called strike.
Well, right-handers who can backdoor a left-handed hitter with a breaking ball, whether it be slider or curve, and vice versa, left-handers to the right-handed hitters. The best I ever saw right-handed at that was Lamar Hoyt when he won the Cy Young back in 1983. He gone. Foul tip, hung on two out. But I have never, as you look at it again, I have never seen a right-hander to this day that could even come close with the command of the curveball to the left-handed hitter on the outside corner like Hoyt. He was uncanny.
Well, what Alex said about Jose was he wants him to get more like David Price. He said David Price's big pitch is carving up the outside corner to the right-hand hitter, but he said he didn't have Quintana's curveball.
Price won today. No, those are grab some bench pitches right there.
Yep.
Billy Butler 2 for 3. Couple of doubles last night, and the only out he made was a line shot into center field that Austin Jackson made a nice catch on.
Must have made 2 good plays. That one coming in and then a blast over his head that he got a great jump and ran it down.
Just off the plate, grabs a break.
And Billy wasn't particularly happy with the call of Phil Cuzzy, but if he's going to stay out there and call it, Jose would be very happy to throw it there, and Butler's going to have to go get it.
Well, he's the one guy in this lineup who can go get that one. Quintana has no decisions against Oakland in his career, but he does have a very fine 3.60 ERA. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. 2 down, 3 down, 2 strikeouts.
It's time for the Subway third inning triple play promotion. Text Subway to 97999 right now, and the 300th texter will win a $30 gift card to Subway restaurants in the Chicagoland area. Subway, fresh is what we do.
Avila, Jackson, then back to the top of the order with Adam Eaton here in our half of the third inning. Chris Bassett, 6'5", 220 pounds. He's given up 1 hit. That was a single to Abreu.
And they've got the shift on, but Lowry well back on the grass.
At the top of the zone, gets it. Last night was the first time since 1975 that we have opened up a season against Oakland.
It's actually
41
nice.
years.
It's kind of nice knowing that you're going to get all 4 in a 4-game series in. And that's one of the advantages of opening out here.
Well, how about some of these names from the past? A blast from the past of White Sox players. Niles Nyman. George Orta, Buddy Bradford, Ken Henderson, Bucky Dent, Carlos May, Odell Washington, and old Willie, Wilbur Wood. That's high and wide. So a full count. Make no mistake about it. We were talking about it coming out on the bus. If Bassett has good control of his curveball or his slider, very seldom you're going to have good control as a right-hander with both of them. Yeah, he can beat you.
He's got good stuff, and he can get that fastball if he wants to. And usually that's working out of the bullpen. He can get it up there 97 miles an hour. Now, at first, he said he preferred being a reliever to a starter. But I think if he get a chance to start, I think he'll realize that throwing in the regular rotation, he's going to do that every 5th day, is much more beneficial, and your arm will probably last longer.
There's a chopper. He's got to get over there. Plenty of time.
Alonso's a very good defensive first baseman. We didn't see him last night. We saw Mark Canha. But the one thing you really don't want to do when you have a lot of time is flip the ball with your glove, because you never really know. He does flip it. That time it worked out real well. But with Alex going up the line, he had all kinds of time to just take it out and flip it.
Yeah, that's a very dangerous flip right there when you got a guy with not a whole bunch of speed.
I was going to say, there's some times when you absolutely have to. That wasn't the time.
So here's Austin. Jackson 1 for 3 last night with a walk and a run scored and a couple of good defensive plays. That's unhittable.
Plenty of room down the left field line if Bassett will hang a breaking ball and Austin can get out in front of it. You see Davis well off the line. Chris pretty much straight away center field.
Two down, 2 strikeouts.
Now batting, number 1.
Talking about strikeouts, how about Chris Archer the other day? 5 innings, 12 punch-outs. Boy, he has good stuff.
He has outstanding stuff. He just didn't come away with that particular win. Tampa Bay did beat Toronto, taking 1 of 3 in that series.
We'll be going there on the donkey end of our first road trip.
Two diametrically opposed ballparks and weather patterns. Minnesota, Tampa Bay.
And there's a nice little flip into left field. So the 2-out single.
Adam Eaton has been on base 24 straight games dating back to last year. Marcus Semien also has
Number 7.
a streak like that.
Rollins.
Sox are going to run on Davis in left and Crisp in center. Neither can throw very well.
Well, he's got good stuff tonight, as you can tell by the reactions of our hitter. Our hitters are having some quick checkups. Had him out in front on that one. Get a good jump and go. Abreu on deck. Looked like he may have been thinking about it. I should say maybe Robin's thinking about it.
So Fegley looking over in the dugout. Not the time you think about pitch out.
Alonso gets back to the bag. That'll retire the side. So Abreu will lead off next inning. Robin Ventura. Log on to WGNTV.com and click on the WGN Sports Game Zone banner for the latest stats and information. Now the Sox Game Zone is powered by Dodd Camera. Dodd Camera, family owned for 125 years, so you know they're good. Handling all your photographic needs. Dodd Camera, where the focus is on you.
Some Sox fans in attendance. And a few very much die-hard Oakland fans in attendance tonight.
It'll be Fegley, Alonso, and Simeon. Josh last year hit .249, 9 homers, and drove in 34 for the A's.
Normally, if you keep the ball away from Josh, he's going to roll over and ground the ball to the left side. With that in mind, the Sox are shifting. They're going to shift a lot more often this year than last. And Fegley normally is considered a dead pull hitter.
One and one to count. Through the vacated spot. So you can cancel a post-game show. That is the first base runner, first hit.
Josh goes inside out with this inside fastball and takes it through the vacated right side.
17,
And as you can see, the shift, at least this time, didn't work.
'28-year-old first baseman Yonder Alonso. .273 career hitter. Takes first pitch strike.
Last year, Alonso was with San Diego, where he hit .282. Didn't give him quite as much power as they would like. Only 5 home runs in 103 games. That's not the best ballpark for left-handed power hitters.
He's got 32 home runs in his career, so they expected when he signed more than that. Blocked nicely by Alex.
We talked about Alonso last night when he came on to pinch hit. Former #1 draft pick of the Cincinnati Reds. At that time, Joey Votto was having some problems. They didn't know how that would play out, so they drafted Alonso with a pick right before the Sox drafted Gordon Beckham. I believe the 7th pick in the draft.
Outfield spread out. For the most part, straight up.
When Cincinnati made that deal, sending Yonder Alonso to San Diego, Matt Latos came back in return.
He gone. He knew it.
He just got outguessed. He was looking for a slider, looking for something off speed, and he got a fastball. Perfect pitch. Right on the inside corner, and strikeout number 3.
Batting the 9th position, shortstop, number 10, Marcus Semien.
So here's Semien. Marcus 0 for 2 last night. Marcus came on nicely in the second half for the A's last season. He looked like he was going to break the all-time record for errors. And it was also bothering his offense. And then working hard with Ron Washington, got his defense straightened out, and the bat came alive. Wound up with 15 homers and 45 knocked in.
I think he made 27 errors first half of the season. And then things got a whole lot better for him as Washington worked on his footwork and his arm action. At times, Marcus has a tendency to get under his throws. They stay up, put a lot of pressure on the first baseman. The second half, it seemed to come to him, and Ron Washington spent a lot of time with a very willing pupil. Marcus Semien, one of the finest guys around.
He is that.
There's a look at Ron Washington, longtime manager of the Texas Rangers, now the third base coach, and works with the infielders. Done a lot of work with Danny Valencia at third base also.
Bagley's off.
Now we'll take a look and see if it's going to be a stolen base. No, it'll be a wild pitch as this ball in the dirt. Alex can't corral it, and Fegley in at second base.
That was just some real good, quick recognition by Josh. Change up, had him off balance. So 2-2.
Mark is a product of Cal Berkeley, which is right down the road.
one aside.
There's a look back at San Francisco from the East Bay.
Shot. They're going to hold Fagley at third. So runners at the corners and one out.
It's 26 straight games on base for Marcus Semien as he gets a fastball right down the middle. And as Jose did last year, when he gets runners on base, he really slows it down, prompting one fan behind home plate to yell out, "While we're young, Quintana."
He is much more effective when he works quickly. Much more.
Crisp is a much better hitter left-handed than right-handed. Tapped out the first time.
Chris, 0 for 1. Went out Quintana to Abreu. Gap out there in left center. Decent lead by Semien. There's the strike. Right at the bottom of the zone, and had it.
Toko has a huge contract by Oakland standards, and they're hoping to get a whole lot more out of him than last year, where he played just 44 games, only 126 at bats. He's had continued neck problems, and he carries that forward through this year.
Quintana's taking a lot of time. And the count 3-1. Helped him out right there.
That was ball 4 up and out of the strike zone, and Chris thinking about, at the very worst, hitting a fly ball for a sacrifice fly. Came up empty. And as you can see, 3 pitches down looking for the ground ball. The other 2 pitches up and out of the strike zone.
So a big pitch in the scheme of things coming up right here. Crisp, against us at least, has been somewhat of an enigma as far as he's been a better high fastball hitter left-handed than he has been right-handed.
He just is a better hitter overall from the left side.
Yeah. Usually it's just the opposite. Helps him out, possibly. Meanwhile, he gone 2 down.
Sox fans, opening day is Friday, April 8th at 3:10. The Indians will be the opponents. All fans ages 21 and over will receive a 2006 White Sox magnetic schedule presented by Miller Lite, the original light Pilsner and official beer of your Chicago White Sox. Purchase your tickets today at whitesox.com or call 866-SOX-GAME.
There's Lowry. Jed went out to Cabrera in left field. It is 1-0 Oakland. So Simeon in the third.
Third run batted in of this young season for Jed Lowry. Avila wants it inside, and Jose gets it there, but it was up higher than he wanted. Lowry takes it right back up the middle.
Well, from what we've seen of Lowry and whatever uniform he's been in, make no mistake about it, he is much more effective on a fastball.
Yep. And will use the whole field. So making contact, using the whole field, hitting in the 2 spot, it's advantageous.
There's a breaking ball strike to Reddick, who went out to Cabrera and left as well. Nice to keep it in front of him.
Reddick originally came to the major leagues with the Boston Red Sox, getting the big leagues in 2009. Had one pretty decent year. That was 2011, where he hit 280, and then was shipped over here to Oakland.
To the bag, steps on the bag, almost 40 seconds between pitches right there. Meanwhile, they lead it 1-0. Is here in the top of the 4th inning. Abreu, Frazier, and Cabrera to face Chris Bassett. Abreu lined a single into right center field. Takes first pitch strike.
Second time through the order, they should get better looks. Also, it has turned into nighttime here in Oakland, meaning the lights have taken over. The visibility probably a whole lot better than the first time around.
Checks it up to even the count at 1.
Abreu's a hard man to face because he can take that inside pitch and shoot it into right field just as easy as he can pull anything if you get it out over the plate.
Fouls it down, and looking at some other scores. Tigers were leading the Marlins 4-0, then 6-4. Marlins tied it up. It's bottom of the 11th now down in Miami, tied at 7. Verlander with 6 innings, giving up 3 runs.
Detroit's going to have some problems with that pen, and that's going to plague them all year long.
Boy, that's the only thing I've been hearing about from the Tigers. Yeah. Pen, pen, pen. Well, one out.
Pretty good curveball from Chris Bassett as he changes speeds. Ahead of Abreu, he keeps it out of the zone. It's a good spot for it, and Fegley does a nice job of digging it out.
Yeah, the speed completely fooled him. Got out there and could not check it up. So here's Tide. Went out 5-4. You know, you were talking about Sox and Twins being the only 2 teams to start the season with nobody on the DL. Ask the Dodgers how they feel about that.
They got 10 guys on
That's
the
a
DL.
major league record.
It's
starting a season.
I mean, watching them drop in spring training every day, you'd read something else about another Dodger going on the disabled list.
That's what we were talking about earlier. If he gets command of that curveball and/or the slider, he can beat you. And if he's got them both under command, which is very unusual, as we talked about so many times for a right-hander, then you're in real trouble. That ball lined hard for a base hit into right field.
There's an 0-2 pitch that's very much of a mistake. It's not that it wasn't in a decent spot. It's just that he didn't want it that good a strike. It's on the outside corner, but Fegley wants it up. As you see Josh's glove, he wants a high fastball. Right about head high would have been fine with him, but instead he got it belt high. Cost him a base hit.
Here's Melky. Hit the ball deep into left field for an out. First and 30, Melky. Takes that fastball. 1-0. Mets shut out Kansas City 2-0. Syndergaard, 6 innings, 3 hits, no runs, 1 walk, 9 punch-outs.
He's got overwhelming stuff. Kansas City's not going to get shut out too many times in their home park.
Well, he painted Kendrys Morales with the bases loaded with 3 sliders, one at 93, the other 2 at 92. That's getting up in that J.R. Richard range right there.
It is.
Well, you know, Syndergaard, I didn't realize he was that big. He's 6'6", 260.
He has overwhelming hair.
He can, yes, he does. His hair's about as long as mine was back in '68 when I played with Boston.
That's some long hair.
And there's ball 4.
4 straight bad ones, and for the first time, Chris Bassett in a bit of a jam.
Now batting, number 26.
We talked again, the one man you don't like to run on is Josh Reddick in right field. Not only has a very strong arm, but he's terribly accurate. The other two, Davis and Crisp, Joe McEwing is going to run all night on them if he gets the opportunity.
Javi grounded out to Valencia. Outfield straight up. Spread out, just a small little gap out there in left center. There he gets a break from Cuzzy. Does Bassett. 0-1.
Melky trying to get a good secondary lead at first base. He's got a job to do, and that's to break up 2 if anything's hitting the infield. Keep the inning alive. But they're calling that play at second base very carefully these days.
Jammed himself right there. Infield fly rule is called. 2 down.
A White Sox group outing is a perfect way to entertain clients, promote teamwork, and boost morale. Your group can enjoy special benefits when they reserve 20 or more seats. The larger your group, the larger the discount. To purchase, visit whitesox.com/group.
Brett Laurie. 1 out to Reddick in right field.
Laurie would like nothing better than to, at the very least, tie up the ball game against his former team. Hitting 16 home runs with this as your home park is pretty decent work.
He's got the catbird seat, 2-0. Talking with former A's catcher, now broadcaster for many years, turned into a terrific broadcaster, Ray Fosse, about Brett Laurie. He said hockey brings it to the park every day. Every day. And he's one of those guys that if you dog it, when you get back to the dugout, he's going to be in your face.
Get Alex Avila on deck. The fans behind home plate thinking their umpires thought that was a strike. That one was well off the plate.
There's one. And there's Ray. Ray, one of the toughest guys to ever play this game. Marion, Illinois. And that'll load him up.
Obviously feeling pretty good about that slider because he threw a 3-1 and missed off the outside corner, so it keeps it alive.
Now batting
for Alex.
Number 31, Alex Avila.
For the last couple of years, 2-out hitting with men in scoring position has been very tough on us.
Well, we saw a whole lot of it in the spring, and hopefully it carries over. And no better time to start than right now with the outfield straightaway, but the infield in a drastic shift.
Well, you know yourself, it becomes a state of mind. If coming back late in the ball game is a state of mind, 2-out hitting is a state of mind. All these things are habits, and everything's contagious. And if a team catches it, then they're in good shape. If they don't, they're not. Takes ball 1. This is when you can just lick your chops a little bit right here, Alex. Sacks packed with socks. Alex with 1 career grand slam home run in his career. That's into left center field. That's a can of corn. So he pitches out of it. We catch a break right there. Can't do anything with it. We trail it 1-0. Pride with White Sox checking and an official White Sox debit card. Only available at your local Wintrust Community Bank. Go to www.wintrust.com/White Sox to learn more. Member FDIC. Quintana finishing up his warm-up tosses here in the bottom of the 4th inning. A's have a run on 3 hits, no errors. We have no runs, 3 hits, no errors. They have stranded 2. We have stranded 5.
And this is a powerful threesome that Jose retired in order in the 2nd inning. Valencia, Davis, and Butler. For a long time now, Danny Valencia in the wintertime has talked about hitting with former White Sox Bobby Molinaro. Good left-hand hitter in his day.
He with the dancing feet. Molinaro's off the end of the bat. 1 pitch, 1 out.
Yeah, Molly moved more in the batter's box when the pitch was on the way than anybody I've ever seen.
I used to love to watch Bobby hit. I'm telling you, he was a pretty good hitter.
Yeah, he was. Yes, he was.
He was one of those guys that was fun to watch. Here's Davis. He struck out his first trip.
Once again, a severe shift. Chris Davis.
First pitch strike. About 20 seconds in between between pitches right there, where when men on base, it's right at 40.
I think Phil Cuzzy behind the plate was clapping his hands and suggesting to Jose that he speed it up somewhat.
Well, umpires, if that's a long way to go. Oh, he had it, couldn't hold on to it. He is really upset with himself.
It's pretty hard to keep your head still when you're sliding that far ahead of a falling baseball.
Let me tell you what, I don't care if he missed it or not. I don't want him running full speed in that camera well.
Absolutely not. Yeah, he thought he should have had it. It's a difficult play, and he realizes that he's going to come in second in a collision with the camera.
Well, we saw the big hurt Frank Thomas do that with his elbow one season, and he was out for a while.
Nope. Cannot afford to have him out at all.
Breaking ball, chops it foul. The big hurt Frank Thomas, Hall of Famer, and deservedly so. People always ask me about the big hurt, and you know, the first thing that always pops in my mind about him, he gone. 5 strikeouts now, but the first thing that always pops in my mind about Big Frank was not his size, which was immense, not his power, which was titanic. He played hurt. He played hurt, and he never offered an alibi to the media or anybody. Teammates, we all knew when he was hurting. Never said a word about it, but he went out there every day and played hurt.
This was a game, and still is a game, where you've got to play banged up because you're playing every day. And number one, the trainers, in our case Herm Schneider and his crew, Brian Ball, they're going to get you out there if humanly possible. Then it's up to you.
Well, the DL list wouldn't tell you that, but what you're saying is true. But the DL list would say the opposite. The guys are more and more and more are going on the DL for less and less and less. Butler struck out his first trip.
The changeup tonight has been a good one, and Jose is working on that, trying to get it down to give him a different look from that cutter inside.
Well, you told me he's been working on it very hard in spring training. And if he comes up with a good one, then he is going to be something. Not that he's not already. Chris Sale, if he missed that game last night, got into a rhythm of hard. And all of a sudden settled back a little bit. In about the 5th inning, started throwing some changeups, and they had no chance. Frazier's got him. A nice 1-2-3 inning. We're into the 5th. We need 1 to tie. you by the Fifth Third Bank, the Curious Bank.
Number 10, Austin Jackson.
Chris Bassett, 6'5", 220 pounds, out of Nashville, has pitched well. Giving up no runs, 3 hits, had some problems last inning, but got out of it. So here's Austin Jackson. Struck out swinging on a good Bassett fastball.
Looks like the bullpen is throwing for Oakland. You don't see many pensmen, though, wearing a jacket when he starts to throw.
Good rip. He was all over it, just underneath it.
Got one right down the middle. And it wasn't the location, but the velocity that fooled him. It's a straight change that Bassett doesn't throw particularly well. Fortunately for him, Jackson did foul it back.
And that's going to be a souvenir right side. Second of this 4-game set. Carlos Rodon tomorrow night against Sonny Gray. On Thursday afternoon, Matt Latos against Kendall Graveman. And those 2 games will be over Comcast Sportsnet.
There is the ace of this staff. Back and healthy now. Sonny Gray, as good as he's been, has never thrown particularly well against our Sox.
No, we've handled him well. That's why baseball is such a wonderful, beautiful game. You get guys who are really good pitchers against certain hitters, against certain teams, cannot get them out. Then you get guys who are not very mediocre pitchers who go out there against good hitting teams and shove the bats right where they shouldn't be shoved.
Well, fortunately, Cy Chen has retired, so Bruce Chen no longer will dominate the Sox ball club. Had a chance to talk with him this spring. He's working with the Cleveland Indians now, helping them with player development.
Good for him. There's a bullet. Marcus with a good play, little throw. Nice pick by Alonso. That ball was scalded.
And Alonso, a very good first baseman, saving Marcus an error. He's got some time, and he throws it right into the ground. That was a long hop, and a long hop is fairly easy to pick, as opposed to those in between.
So here's the leadoff hitter, Adam Eaton, 1 for 2. Well, Bruce Chen's one of those guys who should be, you never know, but who should be just a terrific pitching coach.
You would think so, what he had to go through to spend as long as he did in the major leagues without real good stuff.
Well, there was another guy became a very good pitching coach and tutor to even some quarterbacks in football on their motions, who was a pitcher who didn't have real good stuff, and that was Tom House. Of course, that's his claim to fame, was not pitching.
His positioning in the outfield, over the fence actually,
behind in the bullpen, when he caught Hank Aaron's record home run. Good eye. And there's a base hit. Solid smash into right field.
2 for 3 now for Adam Eaton. So that's 4 hits in 2 nights.
Number 7.
We're not close to through this one yet.
Rollins.
It's funny how coaches, especially hitting coaches, in the past and current day, a lot of your outstanding hitters who have become hitting coaches were not good ones. Some of you guys who were lesser hitters became very good hitting coaches.
Same could be said for pitching coaches. The best pitching coaches were not great pitchers.
Sure.
There's the occasional, but not very often, because great pitchers.
That's the exception to the rule.
Yeah, I mean, they do it naturally, and they can't impart the younger pitchers how to do it.
Jimmy fires that one into the seats. Rollins has gone out to center and grounded to second. There's a strike. The exception to that in hitting was maybe one of the 2 best hitters, 3 best hitters that ever lived, Ted Williams. Ted managed in the big leagues, so he was not a hitting coach, but he was a tremendous help when guys would go to him.
Boy, Lowry took his time, and Adam Eaton can run. Now, I think Bob Melvin is checking to see if he wants an appeal. We'll take a look at it.
Now batting.
He appears to be safe at second. You know he's safe by plenty at first, and that's the way it's going to be.
Well, there is a mental mistake.
And not knowing the speed of Adam Eaton and how quickly he can get down there, and using that long flip.
That was the mental mistake. Abreu is 1 for 2. But one of the guys who was a great pitching coach, or advisor, or consultant, so to speak, who was Hall of Famer Don Drysdale. He was the best flaw picker I've ever seen with pitchers. He had that knack.
That time Jose went out of the strike zone as Bassett missed down again. Here you see the location of the first 2 pitches of the at-bat.
Well, he's had 2 years of experience in the big leagues with no protection behind him, and he still put 30 and 100 on the board both years. Only the second guy to ever do that. He's playing right now on muscle memory. He's going to have to understand that he's got somebody hitting behind him now that's going to protect him, so he doesn't have to go out of or expand his zone the way he did the last 2 seasons. Not one of them really was in the zone.
No, he didn't swing at a strike in that at bat. You'll see on the Xfinity pitch tracks that curveball dipping low and out of the zone was one of the 3. strikes out of the zone.
Yeah, something will click with him. And when he understands that he's going to get better pitches to hit, and he doesn't have to chase them just off the zone, off the plate, out of his zone, I think he's going to have a huge year. Tied is 1 for 2. Yeah, a couple of former Sox. Getting together.
Pitch number 80 on the way, and you would think that a long performance is what Bob Melvin is looking for. He had 6 1/3 out of his bullpen last night. Rich Hill departed in the 3rd, and the bullpen held it right there, scoreless the rest of the way.
Right at the bottom of the zone. The way he's been going about his business, you got to try to make him get it up. Comes back to catch the inside corner, and Todd questioning Cuzzy.
Slow curveball again. I thought it was inside. Looked to be a touch inside.
Eaton at second. Rollins at first. Scoring along with us. That was the fielder's choice by Rollins. That ball hit deep in the left field. Stretch! Stretch! He looks up. You can put it on the board! Yes! Yes! 3-run blast by Todd Frazier, and the Sox lead it 3-1. His first of many in a White Sox uniform.
Second hit tonight, and that was a slow curveball. One too many, as that one was down in the zone, but it came in rolling. And he took it out of the ballpark. All Davis could do in left field was look up. It left the yard at the 362 mark.
Here's Melky. Pick, but the mistake, the homer by Todd Frazier, and we lead it 3-1. Frazier has put us on top 3-1. So here's Fegley. He's singled and he has scored.
This is pretty impressive in that he goes down to get a slow curveball and puts a charge into it. You see the front foot hit, but he kept his hands back. As long as you keep your hands back and you're that strong, you can do some damage. And he gave the Sox the lead.
Well, and at night here, just goes to show you how strong he is. Well, he had 35 last year. He also won last year's home run hitting contest. And, you know, you and I were discussing in the break there. How many times last year did somebody hitting behind Jose Abreu pick him up?
You know, not very much. And that made him expand his own strike zone. And then now he's in trouble, and you can't drive in a run behind him.
That ball's hit hard and over the head of Austin Jackson. So the leadoff double.
Josh Fegley now 2 for 2. He singled and scored the lone A's run in the third. And this ball was tattooed. Jose gets it out over the plate. It's a changeup, but he doesn't get it down far enough. And this ball knuckled over the head of Jackson. It was hit so hard, and he had no chance.
Here's Alonso. Struck out, called out on a good fastball inside corner. Austin Jackson, seeing that develop, got in there quickly. Yeah, but I mean, this as we talked about, one guy can change the whole dynamic of a lineup.
Oh, look, we saw in the spring that this ball club is going to hit the ball out of the park. That was really what was missing last year, was consistent threats. Yeah, you have now some power up and down the lineup.
But all that being said, the thing I'm more thrilled about than anything with this retooling of the ball club is the defense. We got some guys now who can catch the baseball.
The left side is going to be much stronger.
And as Todd Frazier will change the dynamic of the offense, Austin Jackson can change the dynamic of the defense in the outfield.
He can go get them.
With the best of them.
Yeah. And here in Oakland, not quite as much as Comerica, but there's pretty spacious alleys here also.
Two and one. Got away with that one. Just a roller.
Alex out to talk about the location of that last soft breaking ball.
So a full count.
That was a fastball up and out of the strike zone, and Alonso really helped him out. Take a look at the location of this one. It's high and away. It's ball 4, which would have created a great deal of difficulty. He's not out of the woods yet, but he looks a lot better than with first and second and nobody out.
So here is Marcus. Marcus, 1 for 1, a hard single. First pitch strike. You're just tuning in, Sox won the opener last night behind Chris Sale 4-3. David Robertson picking up his first save. One of the nice things about that game last night, if you missed it, was the A's made 2 defensive mistakes, and we took advantage of it to score 2 runs in that 4-3 win.
Well, that really has been the problem and the story for Oakland. Last year they led the major leagues in errors. This spring they led the major leagues in errors, and so far heading into this season things haven't changed all that much for them defensively. Chris had a tough third, and then things turned around. He left 6 outs to cover, fanned 8, walked just 1, and after a tough third, he just nailed down the win.
That pitch has been called a strike a lot of times tonight.
That was a pretty good pitch. Down bottom of the strike zone, but certainly there. Take a look where Xfinity Pitch Track says it is. It's a good hook. Didn't get it that time.
Nice stop. He'll have to dig in his pocket, so it'll be an infield single.
Todd kept it out of left field, but there wasn't much he could do with it as Simeon runs very well. He did the right thing because most of the things that can happen after that play with no chance to get him at first base are bad.
So 2 on 1 out. Here's the veteran Coco Crisp. Go for 2 tonight. That's in right field, long way for Adam. He's got plenty of time to get there. There's a tag and the throw. Bagley moves into third, so 2 down.
Our monster replay tonight is the RBI single by Jed Lowry in the third. This one right back up the middle, giving him 3 driven in the game and a half we've played. And And right now, a meeting at the mound as they want to talk about what they want to do with the guy who has emerged as the hottest of the Oakland hitters in the early going.
Well, the first thing you want to try to do is stay away from a fastball.
Rick Renteria and Robin. Renteria giving the signs to Alex Avila, who then tells the infielders and outfielders where he wants them to be and who he wants to cover.
Fastballs out over the plate to Lowry have been not good for us. Runners at the corners, 2 down. There you go. Just out in front of it. Breaking ball, hooks it foul.
And Phil Cuzzy wants to look at it. I thought he was going to let Jose throw the ball that was grounded to third, and he is. So many times you'll see a pitch come in, the catcher will pick it out of the dirt, and he will hand it to the umpire. This time the ball stayed in play. You'd love it with a little scuff on it because you can make the baseball pretty much sing and dance with a scuff in the right place if you know what you're doing with it.
Been a lot of guys that knew what they were doing with it.
Yeah. And a lot of catchers that helped them out on occasion.
Yogi Berra and Elston Howard used to load them up for Whitey Ford. Take that tobacco, be spitting it right down to their right. All of a sudden he gets pitched to it, and all of a sudden just as they were getting ready to throw it back, rub it right in that tobacco, give it back to him. Jim Fugosi, when he was a shortstop with the Angels, he used to load them up when they'd throw it around the infield with a pitcher.
Well, those are the small advantages you're looking for if you're on the hill.
But everybody did it, so you know it was
true.
You know. We actually didn't mind it when a guy threw a spitter, because you could hang a spitter just like you could hang a slider or a curveball. Alex has done a good job tonight keeping that ball in the vicinity.
The only one Oakland player that took advantage of a pitch in the dirt was fellow catcher Josh Phegley, who realized by where it hopped it was going to be really difficult to corral. He got a great jump and made it into second base.
Yeah, that was
turned out to be a wild pitch
right there.
Yeah. Good recognition there by a fellow catcher.
That fastball again, out over the plate or a little inside. You got to stay away from the fastball with that guy or he's going to hurt you.
He's driven in 4 runs. 2 tonight, inside out swing. It's a fastball. It's in off the plate. But he's able to bring his hands in, get the good part of the bat on it, dump it into right field, and make this a 1-run game.
If it's up, he's going to hurt you with a fastball. So here's Coop. If he beats you on a good slider or a decent curveball, that's one thing. But you know what he can beat you on is a high fastball.
We saw it last night with Chris Sale.
Well, if he can do it off Chris Sale, he can damn sure do it off Quintana.
No doubt. little bumpy in the third and getting that way here in the fifth.
Here's Reddick. He's gone out to left, and he is grounded to Abreu. Can I check it up? That one foul. So very quickly, 2 strikes to Reddick. Another good job by Avila.
Thought he could perhaps get Reddick to expand that strike zone. Back in 2012, he fanned just over 150 times, so he's no stranger to the strikeout.
They pick up one. Another high fastball hit for a base hit. RBI by Jed Lowry, but we lead it 3-2. Blog at WGNTV.com, sponsored by Jeff Vukovich, your local nationwide insurance agent serving the area for over 38 years. To join the nation, visit JeffVuk.com. Nationwide is on your side. Jeff Vukovich. Here's Avi. Avi 0 for 2, a ground out and a pop-up. 3-5-0 for us, 2-6-0 for them.
Talked to Avi before the game and said he was feeling 100%. Very happy with his spring. Certainly hoping to carry it over. Hit the ball hard one time last night. Got a base hit.
Well, the way we scored runs the last couple of years, you know, when you got to the middle of the game and you were trailing by 1 or 2 or 3 runs, it just puts more pressure, especially on young hitters. You know, so we're not going to be in that situation as much as we have been in the last couple of years. It's going to free him up mentally.
Able to stay alive that time on a slow curveball. That ball was a perfect pitch at 0-2. It was just down and out of the zone. And there you see the location of the last pitch.
Outfield just about straight away. Bit of a gap out there in left center. Good check right there on a close pitch.
You see Fegley wants it away. Bassett gets it there. It's that slider just off the corner.
Had him out in front.
Sox fans, our pregame patio parties are the best deal at the ballpark. You receive a game ticket and an all-you-can-eat buffet catered by Baseball Buffet. There's wine and Miller beverages, and the patio opens 90 minutes prior to the game and closes 30 minutes after the start of the game. To purchase tickets, visit whitesox.com/group. I love a buffet.
Here's Brett. He's gone out to right and walked. Breaking ball strike.
Chicago area product. Mark Zipchinski, one of the additions to a bullpen that was absolutely overhauled, dismantled, and repopulated.
There's a base hit. That a boy. A lot easier to call him Mark Scrabble.
Well, it's pronounced just like it's spelled.
You know what? It's all in communication, right?
That's it.
Now batting, number 31, Alex.
He's been a very good situational left-hander. Oakland did a pretty good job of revamping that pen. Not one guy from opening day last year in the bullpen is here this year to open the season.
I don't think I've ever heard of that.
Well, Tampa Bay used to do that on occasion.
Well, start off a season, they usually had 1 or 2 guys in there. 1 or 2. I'm not talking, you know, usually 10 or 11 or 12 down there. They'd have 1 or 2 that were there the year before. I do know that one year, Pinella, when he was managing Tampa Bay, had 13 pitchers, and every one of them was making the minimum salary.
It's usually, that doesn't make for the best bullpen normally. That's a rule of thumb.
And starters. Every pitcher on his staff was making the minimum. That's the only time in baseball that's ever happened.
How'd Lou do that here?
Not very good.
Not very well, no.
And they had promised him when he took the job that they would spend X amount of dollars to make sure he had a good pitching staff.
Well, that's what they spent, X amount of dollars. Now a right-hander has joined Zipchinski in the bullpen. It's Liam Hendricks, another addition. He came up with Minnesota.
There, boy. There's a smash by Alex. So Brett makes the turn, moves into third. Runners at the corners, just one out.
Even with the shift, playing him as a dead pull hitter, he was still able to rifle it through the right side. Gets a good swing at this fastball. And you would think that the string for Bassett has gotten a whole lot shorter as Kurt Young goes to the mound to give the bullpen a chance to get loose. They are not ready quite yet. They will be by the time Kurt gets back to the dugout, because it is the longest distance in all of baseball to get from the mound to the dugout here in Oakland.
I wonder how long they'll enforce it.
30 seconds? Probably not very long.
No. Well, a few years ago,
they had the 30 seconds.
C-League had mandated some rules, and it lasted 2 weeks. So here's Austin. He's 0 for 2 last time up. He had a bullet, a rocket, right, to Simeon, who made a good play, then made a low throw to first, and a good pick by Alonso.
It'll be interesting if this at bat doesn't turn into a double play. Bob Melvin goes to Zipchinski against Eaton.
Yeah, you can book that, Dano.
Had him with a couple of hits tonight, giving him 4 for a game and a half.
The 0-2 pitch. He got a good pitch to hit and just could not put it in play.
That was a fastball outer third, very similar to the 0-2 pitch he missed on to Frazier back in the 4th inning. This has well too much of the plate at 0-2, and Austin able to stay alive.
That's going to be trouble. Yes, it is. A base hit by Austin Jackson. Scores Lowry. And it's a 4-2 Sox lead. And here comes Bob Melvin.
He's already motioned to the bullpen. And so 3 straight singles have done in Chris Bassett here in the 6th. And on comes Mark Zipchinski. Bassett will exit. Sox have a 2-run lead, looking for more. And we'll step out and be back after these messages.
One out, one in. Good guys on top 4-2 here in the top of the 6th inning.
Zipchinski from Oakland, Illinois.
Here's Adam. He's 2 for 3. Avila at second. Austin Jackson at first.
Mark split his year last year between Cleveland and San Diego.
Over the years, his value has been to a contending ball club.
Yeah, he's been able to be a good situational left-hander. Last year was not one of his better years. He had a tough time with San Diego, but still managed to appear in 72 games. So he was very durable.
Get through, it will. So now they're going to hold him because Reddick can throw and he is accurate. So that'll load him up on the 3rd hit by Eaton.
This one just sneaking through the right side. Jed Lowry is a good solid player but doesn't have great range. And this one scoots by him. So apparently the one left-hander is going to be it for Zipchinski as he'll depart. And as he walks out, we'll step out and be back after these messages. April 22nd at 7:10. The first 20,000 fans in attendance will receive a White Sox tote bag presented by the MLB Network. Stay after for a post-game fireworks show presented by the aforementioned MLB Network. Purchase your tickets today at whitesox.com or call 866-SOX-GAME. And so looking for more runs, Liam Hendricks comes in the game to face Jimmy Rollins. You look at the numbers last year, and he was pretty good. 5-0, ERA below 3. And Hendricks pitched for the Toronto Blue Jays.
Sacks packed with good guys. One out. Rollins 0 for 3 tonight. Checks it up, takes a strike.
Four grand slams, pretty decent numbers with the bases loaded. Opening day 2014 was the last of his 4 grand slams.
That evens accounted 1.
Nice stop by Josh Fegley as he saves a run.
It's hard to argue about this guy not being a Hall of Fame player. Not with the career he's had. The more you look at his numbers, the more you dig into it, the more you see he is a Hall of Famer. They get him, they turn it. But we come up with one, and we lead it 4-2. Bottom of the 6th inning. Quintana giving up 2 runs on 6 hits. He's got Valencia, Davis, and Butler.
This is the 3rd time he will face that threesome. The previous 2 times he retired them 1-2-3, looking for more of the same, with the bullpen up and going for the Sox for the first time tonight.
Yeah, this is, needless to say, a big inning for him.
There's a pen. It's Matt Albers, who had a magnificent spring. In fact, most of the bullpen had a great spring.
I like our bullpen. So Valencia is gone.
Join us for opening weekend at U.S. Cellular Field. The first 20,000 fans on Saturday, April 9th, will receive a White Sox winter hat presented by Comcast Sportsnet. Visit whitesox.com to purchase your ticket today and get one of those handsome hats. They'd come in handy looking ahead at the weather forecast.
Don't say that.
Well, I'm not going to tell you it's going to be awful. It's going to be good baseball weather, 36, 37 degrees.
You know, you can go to hell for line like you can for Steve.
Well, I mean, it's a wet cold.
Everybody's talking about what a tough schedule we have, which is not an easy one. You know, you got 1 off day in
first
April.
28.
Yeah.
First 28 days, 1 off day.
So that makes it a little tough. But I just like the idea of having as many teams either open up on the coast, West Coast, or in domes. You know,
not a bad idea. Cut down on the double headers you have to play later, or if you're seeing a team only 1 time and you don't have that off day, you have to play a double header right now.
That ball hit hard into deep center field. Shows you how strong he is. He was way out in front, just reached out, and there's a 1-out double. So Davis now 1 for 3, couple strikeouts and that double.
And now we'll see at the 92 pitch mark if Robin is going to come out or if he's going to leave him in. Davis just flicks this ball and hits it about 390 feet to right center field.
Butler is struck out and grounded to third. So Butler. So he is 5 for 32 lifetime off Quintana.
Well, he came in with Valencia 2 for 17. He's now 2 for 20. And able to control Butler also. Zach Duke has joined Matt Albers.
That's one of the reasons I like our bullpen. We've got some finesse pitchers, soft tossers, and we got some flamethrowers down there. We went there for going back a few years. We went there. Everybody would coming out of our bullpen looked the same.
Well, there's a lot of variety down there, and all of them pretty good stuff.
It's into center field, right at him. So that's the hang Wolfram right there for Butler. 2 down.
That's the second time in as many nights where Butler has reached out, scalded the ball to center field, only to see Jackson there. So here comes Robin. It will be a job well done, I believe, as Quintana will exit this one.
He's going to make the call. See, he goes 5 2/3, giving up the 2 runs, 7 hits, and of course the runner Chris Davis at second base is responsibility. Second baller Matt Albers comes on in. We'll be back.
Outs at 5 2/3. The pitches piled up as Jose was knocking at the door of 100 pitches. That and the fact that Fegley was 2 for 2 against him, so it brings Matt Albers in to face Stephen Vogt. And Albers last year was awfully good in 30 games. He had a magnificent spring, and he inherits Chris Davis out at second base with 2 outs here in the 6th.
Vogt last year 18 homers, 71 knocked in. The day before yesterday, it was a nice piece in the local newspaper here about Hunter Pence and Stephen Vogt on how they keep the club loose. Respective clubs. Hunter, of course, with the Giants. First pitch strike. Hunter Pence is another one of those guys I love to watch play.
Well, he's a good player, and he's one of the spark plugs of that Giants team, and it's a very good Giants team this year.
He brings that edge. I love to see guys with an edge.
Well, the Giants won again. They beat Milwaukee 2-1. They're now 2-0. Johnny Cueto getting his first win as a Giant.
Okay, slows it up a little bit. Rollins with a nice play. Gets him, and that'll retire the side. So a good job by Quintana and Matt Albers. Win to the 7th, leading 4-2.
And it's the end of the 6th inning. Vogt takes one right back up the middle. Albers able to slow it down. Jimmy Rollins right there. Get out of the inning with a 4-2 lead. The Speed Replay is brought to you by Xfinity. Xfinity X1 will change the way you experience TV.
You can see the way that Jimmy stayed with that hop right there. Came up on him, and he still made the play.
Stephen Vogt stays in the game behind the plate.
Abreu, Frazier, and Cabrera. It was 8-1 for 3, that single to right field back in the first inning. 4-9-0 for our guys, 2-7-0 for their guys. Good rip.
Well,
good pitch to hit.
Hit a fastball right down the middle and fouled it straight back. Take a look at the location of this one. All right, Xfinity pitch tracks. 95, but it's straight as a string and right down the middle.
Hendricks didn't throw that hard when he was with Minnesota.
No, well, he came to them as starting pitcher. We saw him in a starting role a couple times. But out of the bullpen, you usually gain a few miles an hour, knowing you're not going to go all that long. And Zipchinski and Hendrick, the two men out of the pen that didn't get any work last night. Bob Melvin used 5 relievers.
Went down.
Our fourth drive of the game came in the 5th inning, and it got the Sox on the board. Slow rolling breaking ball, and he hammered it out of the yard. The first Sox home run of the year. First 3 runs batted in for Frazier. Gave him a lead they haven't relinquished.
He had him out on his front foot. And it just again illustrates how strong Todd Frazier is. Here at night in this ballpark, the ball just does not carry that well.
No, he really made it look small, and Davis really took a step, maybe 2, and looked up. This turned out to be a no doubter.
What's this? Watch how he gets out there. Plants already. And in essence, one hands it right out into those seats out there over the scoreboard.
Going down to get that one, his right leg was almost on the ground. So this is a pretty strong guy with a lot of protection behind Jose.
Five of the 6 RBIs we have this year were by new acquisitions. 3 by Tide. Jackson and Rollins. Two down.
Had a good hard slider. The toughest part of that one was Vogt blocking it and putting on the tag.
So here's Melky, 0 for 2 with a walk.
Melky Cabrera.
Make your plans to be with us tomorrow night. Game 3 of this 4-game set. Carlos Rodon against Sonny Gray. And on Thursday afternoon and getaway day, Matt Latos against Kendall Graveman. And both those games will be over Comcast Sportsnet. Inning right there for the Aussie. 7th inning stretch. We lead it by 2.
Baseball scoreboard and schedule.
Bottom of the 7th inning. Yonder Alonso, Marcus Semien, then back to the top of the order with Coco Crisp. Alonso 0 for 2, a couple of punch outs. One pitch, one out.
Boy, it's great. If you're a sinker baller and you see a left-hand hitter try to roll over on an outside pitch, he's going to ground to the right side almost every time. Now, occasionally they'll sneak through, but not that time.
A couple of years ago when he was in Baltimore, I didn't think much at all of Matt Alvarez as far as the stuff, you know. But he was hurt. And now all of a sudden he comes over to us. He was hurt. He got well. And since he's been out there, then I'm telling you, he's amazing. What a job he has done.
I don't know how the sinker has improved, but it's improved drastically. And now there's a good 4, 5, 6 inches of sink on just about each and every one. Tough to hit anything but the top of the baseball. And if you hit the top of the baseball, you're going to ground it at somebody. Or if you're very fortunate, you'll drive it through.
Well, he's got a sinker. A lot of our older Sox fans will recall White Sox reliever named Bobby Locker. And he'd tell you it was coming, and you still couldn't do anything with it. That's what you call a power sinker.
I remember Bobby Locker. Bullpen up and going just in case.
Marcus a solid single and an infield single.
That's what Matt does very well. He's arm side strong, meaning he's going to be able to pretty much throw a strike whenever he wants to into right-handers, away from left-handers. And that fastball not only sinks, but it buries itself inside right on the hands of the right-hand hitters.
Pops him up. Adam Eaton.
Join the free WhiteSox.com blacklist for exclusive club content all year long. That includes ticket offers, breaking news, special event invites, and more. Visit WhiteSox.com/blacklist to register today.
Here's Cavalli. Coco Crisp. He's 0 for 3 tonight.
Crisp hitting from his best side, which is the left side, as the Oakland bullpen up and going once again. Ryan Madsen through last night, up once again.
Bob Melvin and Kurt Young are going to be doing a lot of walking this year.
Well, that's the two big concerns. One is obviously the defense, and the other will be the starting rotation. Now they're going to get Henderson Alvarez back. He's on the disabled list, but he is a bona fide middle of the order rotation guy, and when he comes back, it's going to take a little pressure along with Sonny Gray off that rotation. But that's the concern for the A's.
Well, that's why they're going to do a lot of walking. Adam gets to it. Coco on his way to second base, and he'll get there.
For the first time tonight, Crisp got the hit from the left side, and he hits this ball awfully hard. Then realizing that Adam Eaton was going away from the throw, he's able to make it easily into second base.
Well, he's always been much, much better against us left-handed. Lowry is 2 for 3 with 2 RBIs.
Zach Duke is ready for Josh Reddick, who's in the on-deck circle, if Lowry can keep it alive.
Well, they've scored 5 runs in the first 2 games. He has 4 RBIs. Does Lowry. Two and one to count. Big hack.
That time Matt got it up there at 95 miles an hour, right on the inside corner.
Full count. With Reddick at 20 homers last year on deck. He gone. What a job once again by Matt Albers, and we're into the 8th.
Up a couple of earned runs with 7 strikeouts. Todd Frazier hit a 3-run homer to put the Sox ahead. They scored 4 last night. It was enough. 4 tonight. Hopefully it will be enough again. That's brought to you by the Honda Dream Garage Sales Event. Now at your Honda dealers. Our Honda Game Summary.
Here's Avi Garcia. Avi 0 for 3 tonight. Avi 1 for 4 last evening with a rocket base hit into left field.
Be pretty nice to pick up one more insurance run.
on the outside edge of the outside corner. Hendricks has faced 4 guys and has 5 outs. Good rip. And Hendricks, I tell you, he's a different pitcher than we saw with Minnesota.
Well, he's shown a terrific slider to go with the better than average fastball. They're very happy with the new configuration of their bullpen. Zipchinski, Ryan Madsen, John Axford, and Liam Hendricks.
Alonso's got him. 1 out. So here's Brad Lowry. He started off that 6th inning with 1 out, a single,
Now batting.
and came around to score. He's 1 for 2 tonight. Buckles him a little bit with that breaking ball. High pop-up. That's a big league pop-up right there. Look at Lowry. Almost to second base when he was. I love it.
Number 31, Alex Avila.
So here's Alex. He had a big hit back in the 6th, putting Lowry on third base with a bullet single into right field. Plus, he's had a good game behind that plate. Just tuning in, Hayes with the run in the 3rd took the lead. We scored 3 at the top of the 5th. They scored 1 in the bottom of the 5th, and then we added that one in the 6th. Marlins tried to come back in that game. They lose it 8-7 in 11 innings down in Florida. Play. Mets and that big right-hander Syndergaard shut out Kansas City 2-0. Dallas Keuchel beats the Yankees 5-3. Boy, he is one of the premier left-handers in the game. He's a Mark Burley who throws hard.
Yeah, I mean, 92 with plenty of sink and lots of ground balls.
And all he does is beat you. Clint Hurdle, his guys beat St. Louis 6-5. That was in 11 innings. Tampa Bay gets on the board against Toronto 3-2 down at Tropicana Field. Seattle beat Texas 10-2 down at Arlington. foul ball. Cubs beat the Angels 6-1. Dodgers over San Diego 3-0.
San Diego has yet to score this year.
And coming out of spring training last year, they were the preseason picks to win the West. I know I was one of those who picked them in the West. That ball hit hard. The foul, right side, wrong shape. It's going to be tough to beat those Giants in that division.
They are awfully good. And the Dodgers have all those injuries, but playing San Diego the first series, their pitching is more than dominated.
High pop up. And that'll do it. 1-2-3 inning. He is retired. 7 in a row has Hendricks. And they trail it 4-2.
Service, and it delivers every out-of-market game live on HD on over 400 supported devices. Also includes a subscription to At Bat Premium, the #1 app for live baseball. Blackouts and other restrictions apply. Visit MLB.tv for details. And Zach Duke comes in the ball game for the second time in as many nights. He pitched a third of an inning last night, and most likely he'll go a third of an inning tonight, assuming he can retire Josh Reddick.
Ready go for 3. He's gone out to Cabrera and left. Grounded to Abreu and struck out. What a job by Matt Albers.
Got out of a jam, inning and a third, 1 hit, 1 strikeout, and that was that.
Breaking ball gets a break right there. And the count evens at 1.
Nate Jones loosening in the pen. And he undoubtedly will be coming in.
Jimmy Rollins. Good try by Rollins. So the infield single.
Here comes Robin. That's going to be it for Zach Duke as Reddick goes against the shift, takes it to the left side, and nothing Jimmy can do with this one. So the tying run comes to bat, but it'll be against Nate Jones. So Robin calls to the pen. Nate Jones is going to come in. As Zach Duke walks out, we'll step out and be back after these messages. Jones, 2/3 of an inning last night, and was overwhelming. And get that fastball up there at 100 with a slider that's absolutely unhittable.
And a motion that you don't see very often, if ever.
I was going to say, not very often, but I can't remember anybody using it.
Hit right at him. Mr. Hang Wolfen for Valencia. Meanwhile, 1 out. There's a guy that I can't remember his name that had a motion similar to Nate's, where he just laid it off back here and then like a catapult threw it. And I can't remember. And he threw hard, but Nate didn't throw as hard as Nate.
Now batting left fielder.
Not many do.
No.
Chris Davis.
And I can't recall his name. So here's Chris Davis. He is 1 for 3, a double.
It hit him.
So tying runs aboard.
Just barely catching the lead elbow. Bill Cuzzy. Here's it tick off the elbow, and he winds up at first base.
Designated hitter, number 16, Billy Butler.
Well, if you're going to take one off Nate Jones for the club, you got to have your sanity checked.
Yeah, that could have shattered his elbow with a clean hit. But you got the original good man for 2 up. Billy Butler can ground into double plays with the best of them.
And he also, for me, is the most dangerous hitter in this lineup. So it's one side of the page or the other.
Alex has got to make sure if Nate Jones goes to a put-away slider that winds up in the dirt, that he's able to smother everything.
Boy, he's done a great job tonight of doing it.
He is.
Oh, 2 the count.
That one buckled the knees of Butler before snapping over the outside corner.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it. 2 on. 4-9-0 for us. 2-9-0 for them. Just got a piece of that one. Good pitch by Nate. Good job by Butler just to foul it away.
89-mile-an-hour slider that was just off the outside corner, and Butler just barely tipped it.
That's into center field. Coming on. He's there. So Butler has lined out 3 times. Dawson Jackson in the series. You know, Steve, I never faced J.R. Richard. He was after me. But I never in my career, I never faced a 95-mile-an-hour slider.
Well, that's one of the reasons why he was close to unhittable for right-hand hitters.
Yeah.
And I did have the displeasure of facing him. Now, I couldn't hit even when I hit. So I'm going to preface it with that. But literally the ball exploded in the glove. He didn't waste his slider. I mean, he didn't have to. But looking at some of the better right-hand hitters and how they faced him, they were just overmatched.
So here's Vogt. He's dangerous. Takes ball 1. Yeah, in case you guys never heard of J.R. Richard. What was he, 6'8"?
6'8". The stride seemed to be
pitched with Houston.
From the pitcher's rubber almost to the grass.
And they said the baseball looked like a tennis ball in his hand.
Well, you couldn't see it, and that was a frightening thing because his hand was so big, making the baseball look like a golf ball, but you never saw the ball. But Nate's got a slider that's in the neighborhood. Not quite as devastating, but pretty close.
Who was that?
Nate. His slider.
Three 3-0 the count.
Yonder Alonso in the on-deck circle, and all 3 have been high and away, meaning he's been opening up too quickly.
There's one. And a full count.
That ball was way out of the zone, and Vogt certainly did Nate a favor. And there you look at the 5th pitch. The last one was way out of the zone.
So 2 on, 2 out. Full count. Austin Jackson deep out there in center field, as he should be. Payoff pitch. What a job right there. Wow.
I think the ball hit him.
So the bases are loaded. And here comes Coop.
That one
It did get him on his foot.
And then hit Alex for good measure.
The hitter will be Yonder Alonso, who is 0 for 3 tonight.
Now batting, 17, Yonder Alonso.
Alonso struck out in the third, struck out in the fifth, and grounded to second, leading off last inning. And there's a base hit. And here's the throw home, not in time. So we got ourselves a 4-4 game, and once again, Jose Quintana will not get a decision.
First 2 runs batted into the year for Alonso. This looked like a slider that was right down the middle, and he's able to rope it to right field. And no chance at the plate.
So the hit by pitch to Chris Davis just nicked him. Sets this up.
Number 3, Chris Coughlin.
Chris Coughlin comes on a pinch hit for Marcus Semien. Coughlin had a pinch at bat last night. Struck out looking. That was against David Robertson.
Yeah, he had 3 pitches that he disagreed with all 3 of them. And they all 3 were in exactly the same spot almost. Meanwhile, takes ball 1. In the 9th for us, Austin Jackson to lead it off, then Adam Meaton and Jimmy Rollins, with Abreu being the 4th hitter. Takes the strike. At 96 in the count, 1-1. Coughlin had a good season last year with the Cubs. And the count 1-2.
Well, a couple of big breaks as those pitches were off the corners.
Chris gonna be saying to himself, why me?
There's a look at the locations.
Yes, he did. No, he didn't, says Hallion.
Trying to slide her down and in.
That's an either or right there.
Yeah, you can flip a coin on that.
That's it. At least 50% of the time he's going to get called out on that one. Checks it up. And now full count. Been a big 2-run single by Yonder Alonso. We're into the 9th, tied at 4.
the ball game. We saw him last night. He picked up an inning, gave up a hit, and got out of it without giving up any runs. So here's the closer.
And here's Austin Jackson. Takes first pitch strike. Austin 1 for 3 with an RBI.
He faced Doolittle last night, went down on strikes.
One out.
Lowry shifts to shortstop, and Chris Coughlin stays in the game to play second.
So here's Eaton. He's 3 for 4 tonight. Takes first pitch strike. He is 5 for 7 in the series. Very quickly to count 0-2. 4-9-0 for us, 4-10-0 for them. Just amazing the luck that Jose Quintana has had since he's been in the White Sox uniform.
He leads the world in no decisions.
2 down.
Doolittle last year was injured most of the year. Only appeared in 12 games for Oakland.
Now batting, number 7, Jimmy Rollins.
So here's Jimmy. Oh for 4 this evening.
Sox bullpen up and going.
$53 no decisions for Jose Quintana since 2012. 54. It's 8 more than anybody else in baseball. 2 years ago had 17 in one season.
Now you're seeing it here tonight, how things happen for him, and Zach Putnam loosening up.
That's low.
If they don't score, it'll be Putnam. If they do, it'll be David Robertson, who's warming up right next to him.
It'll be the top of the order for the A's. That ball hit hard, deep. Stretch, stretch. He looks up. You can put it on the board. Yes. Jimmy Rollins with a home run, and the Sox take a 5-4 lead. Mercy.
Did it in front of the home folks, and did it from the right side. This is his second run batted in, his second run scored tonight on his first home run of the year, giving the Sox the lead, and that's going to bring David Robertson into the ball game.
Don't stop now, boys. As here is Jose. He's 1 for 4. Sox have 7 RBIs, 6 coming by our new acquisitions. Backhanded, no, in the hole. So that'll be a base hit.
Jimmy gets a fastball. It's right down the middle. And he hits it right over the 362 mark. Oh, it's a pleasure to see the ball going out of the ballpark. We saw it all spring. We've seen it here tonight. And Avila and Laurie ecstatic.
Well, we talked about it last evening that Jimmy Rollins can be a game changer for this ball club.
A couple of great late additions. Jimmy Rollins, Austin Jackson.
So here's Bobby Melvin out of that dugout with Todd Frazier at the plate. And he's made the call to the pins. So Sean Doolittle will depart, and we'll be back.
Last night, he was pretty good. 2 perfect innings. He struck out 1. He's inheriting Abreu at first base and looking in at Todd Frazier, who has 1 of the 2 Sox home runs tonight. This is how it looked in the 5th inning. Oakland leading at the time 1-0. A rolling breaking ball down off Chris Bassett. It leaves the ballpark.
So 1 in, 1 on, 2 out. Ryan Dull last night was just a strike throwing machine.
He was the 3rd of the A's 6 pitchers last night.
2-0 the count. That was home run number 230 for Jimmy Rollins.
Couldn't have come at a better time.
Well, he's hit some big home runs in his career.
Yeah.
He's the all-time Philly hit leader and double. Watch out. That'll retire the side, but the home run number 230 for that man right there, Jimmy Rollins, and we lead it 5-4.
try to save his second in as many nights. That's what he did last night. Leadoff walk in the 9th inning. That to Coco Crisp. He was able to pitch around it, retiring the next 3. So just like last night, the first man he's going to face is Coco Crisp.
Coco is 1 for 4, a double. First pitch strike. Frazier, even with the bag off the line at third. Abreu, even with the bag off the line a few steps at first. Outfield, for the most part, slightly to the left, spread out about equidistant. And the count 0-2.
This is a real good man to keep off base. 299 stolen bases. Doesn't quite have the speed of Billy Burns, but he's got very good speed. That one just missed him.
2-2 the count. Five 11-0 for our guys. 4 10-0 for them. Take him right here. You don't want to go full. That's into left center field. Hit pretty good. Melky makes the call, has the ball. Melky was playing him over towards the line, got a good jump on it. That's what we were talking about, the addition of Austin Jackson. There's a classic example of it. It gives the corners more so they can play towards the line a little bit, because Austin can cover right center and left center, so they don't have so much room to cover out there.
Good running grab by Melky and a huge first out.
Here's Lowry, 2 for 4 with a couple of RBIs. Takes low ball 1. That evens the count. Jed Lowry, 31-year-old infielder. Takes the strike. Good pitch by David.
Those are the 3 last night that he threw to Chris Coughlin. Each one successively better, and actually the third that he took, because he took them all, was in the zone.
He gone. 2 down. Well, Coughlin had a bat last night that you don't have very often.
No hittable pitches, as this one is a good backdoor breaking ball.
Now batting, right fielder.
Gets a man with 4 of the 7 runs batted in for Oakland this year. They go down on strikes.
Here's Reddick. He is 1 for 4 with a run scored at an infield single. He's dangerous. Takes that breaking ball strike. And the count 0-2.
Well, keep that breaking ball in the outside corner in there. And Reddick is not going to touch him. Not many would. There you see the first pitch. A very good one. The second one well out of the zone.
Throw him another one just a couple of miles an hour slower. Down out of the zone. Canerico fan. Chopper, and this ball game is over. So the first home run